Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plane Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. India's largest airline, IndiGo, is facing its worst operational meltdown in years, leaving tens of thousands of passengers stranded across the country. For the fourth consecutive day, airports witnessed chaotic scenes as over 400 flights were cancelled today alone, with delays stretching beyond 12 hours in some cases. Delhi Airport announced that all IndiGo domestic departures were cancelled until midnight, marking an unprecedented disruption in the peak travel season. At the heart of this crisis is the severe crew shortage following the implementation of new flight duty time limitation rules on November 1. These regulations aimed at reducing pilot fatigue, cut maximum duty hours and increased mandatory rest periods, forcing IndiGo to recalibrate its schedules. The airline admits to misjudging crew requirements, leading to a domino effect of cancellations and delays. Compounding the crisis were technical glitches in crew rostering systems, winter fog and congested airports. But if other airlines could do it, why not IndiGo? Is it just as simple as having a larger fleet to manage or reluctance to hire more pilots? The rules have now been withdrawn and certain specific nighttime relaxations have also been given to IndiGo to allow it to get its house in order. But anger is severe from this turmoil, and the fingers are also pointing at the DGCA and the Aviation Ministry. Why did they not force corrections from IndiGo well in time? Who is really accountable, and will that accountability be set? That's coming up with our guests. First up, let's look at the rules that the aviation watchdog DGCA has now withdrawn. These rules, mind you, were meant for pilot and crew rest and passenger safety. So there are its own dangers now that these rules have been withdrawn. So what are these rules? Mandatory weekly continuous rest period for flight crew extended from 36 to 48 hours. Rule number 2, definition of night amended to midnight from 6 a.m. instead of midnight to 5 a.m. and maximum night landings for flight crew cut from 6 to 2. Also, maximum consecutive night flight duties for flight crew was capped at 2 per week. Now, all of this, IndiGo says through their entire roster, one can understand that it would have an impact. But remember, this hasn't come suddenly. They've had more than a year to prepare for this. Why did IndiGo face such a hassle when others did not? And that is because of its poor pilot-plane ratio and its reluctance, clearly it seems, to hire pilots to take care of this. For Akasa Airline, for example, there are 800 pilots for 30 aircrafts. So the pilots per plane are 27. They can account for rest, leaves, etc. and the new roles. For Air India, there are 3,500 pilots for 187 aircrafts with 19 pilots per plane. For Air India Express, there are 2,000 pilots for 115 aircrafts, so 17 pilots per plane. But look at IndiGo. There are 500 pilots for 5,000 pilots for 417 aircraft with only 13 pilots per plane. For SpiceJet too, that ratio is not very good. There are 400 pilots for 35 aircraft, so 11 pilots per plane. But since IndiGo has a much larger operation, they obviously suffered more, and we are being told that they also insisted that they are not going to hire more. Let's take a look at the reasons which IndiGo itself accepts led to this fiasco. So they say they misjudged crew requirement under new flight duty time limitation norms, but accepted that recruiting pilots would have squeezed thin profit margins. So they prioritized their profits before this passenger safety. They blamed it on the fact that IndiGo conducts massive scale of operations with 2,300 flights a day. This was hit, according to them, because of this flight duty time limitation rule. IndiGo maintains that because the largest number of aircraft is with them at 400, crew utilization levels were hit by flight duty time limitation. So they've kept blaming these new rules, but they're not as new as they're making it sound. They also accept that with IndiGo's high frequency network, highest red-eye and night flights, that really led to them not being able to account for it. The airline found it difficult, it says, to manage crew shortages. But whose responsibility was it to either alert the system that they're not going to be able to handle, make contingencies for it, or cut down the number of operations they have, at least temporarily? But the larger question is, who's to blame for this flying freeze? Is it the airline IndiGo alone? Aviation experts are hinting at its poor planning, majorly as the reason they failed to recruit or train enough pilots. They froze hiring and expanded its winter schedule without adequate crew. Or is it the DGCA as well that is to be blamed for the mess? Many are citing the aviation watchdog's oversight failure as it approved IndiGo's expanded schedule without checking pilot availability. In all of this, ultimately the buck stops with the aviation ministry. That's where the ultimate responsibility will lie, because the ministry has to ensure both passenger safety but also ease of flying for passengers. It in fact reversed the FDTL order because of this situation today, which invited even more flack, because now they've opened up a Pandora's box about passenger safety. So after this turmoil, the rules have been relaxed. But will accountability be set? That debate is coming up with our guests. We'll also tell you more of what the aviation minister directives are now.
जाना है फंक्शन में, वहाँ परेशान है। 7 तारीख को उनको उसका फंक्शन है।
किसी तरीके की अकाउंटेबिलिटी इन एयरलाइन से नहीं हो रही है। उन्होंने एक बड़ा मार्केट कैप्चर किया हुआ है, 2 ही एयरलाइंस रह गई हैं, मार्केट कैप्चर किया हुआ है। पैसेंजर्स आर द मर्सी ऑफ दीज एयरलाइंस।
The Minister of Civil Aviation has held detailed meetings with the IndiGo leadership. We are very confident that there will be a
Let's go across to our guest joining us, Sarosh Damania, aviation lawyer. Captain Ehsan Khalid is a veteran IAF pilot, instructor and examiner. Tushar Gupta, journalist. Pooja Tripathi, spokesperson of the Congress Party. And Shiv Khera, author and citizen voice with us. Can I just tell, for the benefit of our viewers before I begin, that the aviation minister has issued certain directives just a short while ago, in which is, of course, it has confirmed that the FTDL orders have been placed in abeyance with immediate effect. Airlines have been directed to provide timely and accurate updates, ensure automatic refunds for cancelled flights, arrange hotel accommodations for those stranded, priority assistance to be given to senior citizens and differently abled. They have also announced that a high-level inquiry has been instituted and accountability will be fixed. Measures will be taken so that this doesn't repeat in the future. But Tushar, isn't all of this coming too late?
Well, absolutely, Shivani. I think it's coming a little too late, but I think that's all the government can do at this point. The important thing here is to address the passengers that are stranded first. But between Indigo and the government, some things need to be made clear. These rules were notified in January 2024. Are we going to believe that the carrier with the greatest market share in this country was in a position not to hire pilots across the last 18 to 24 months? Are we going to sit here and believe that the carrier in question did not take into account the night flights it has, the network it has, the coverage it has? Are we going to believe that Indigo was so innocent that it did not have the time to adjust the roster of its pilots? Clearly not. Clearly, this was an intentional plan, perhaps by the carrier in question. Because if you look at this entire fiasco, how can all of a sudden, just as in the new rules come into play, the carrier can have a pilot shortage problem? That's not really how it works. The stakeholders, the carriers, they must have debated this with the government. They must have debated this within when the rules were notified. And all of a sudden, you have these massive disruptions, which start with the delay of few hours and then end up becoming cancellation after 24 hours. How does this really work? And a lot of passengers are actually wondering, and wondering correctly, that if this was the plan all along.
Yeah,
So
no,
why-
there is certainly an accountability, possibly even complicitness on the part of the airline. But, you know, Tushar, before I go to Pooja, the question is that the DGCA, which is the watchdog, and the aviation ministry cannot just say, oh, you know, they also cannot be on autopilot. No, that the airline will figure it out and they are ultimately responsible. The buck stops with them. They should have pulled up the airline if it was seemingly ill-equipped or unprepared to execute these rules?
You know, Shivani, this is a country, we are a country where once upon a time the government actually nationalized one of the biggest private airlines of the world. So the government can do a lot of things, but for now, the one thing the government should do is to ensure that unless IndiGo doesn't have the requisite number of pilots and the cabin crew, their roster should be tweaked accordingly. The scheduled flights should be tweaked accordingly. They cannot promise more flights to the consumer than the pilots they have and the passengers they can cater to. That is the first thing they can do. The government has limitless powers there. It's not about what the government can do or not do. The government, if it wants to, going by the law, it can also nationalize IndiGo. But of
That's not
course,
the
not
point
that
I'm
what I
making.
suggest.
We don't want to go to that extreme. The
No.
point I'm making is that
Yes.
ahead of this November 1 deadline, surely there should have been some sort of oversight.
No, but then the private carrier is expected to hire the number of pilots. Yes, if we want the DGCA now to get into the micromanagement
Okay.
of the carrier, I think that is the lesson going
All right.
forward. That if the carriers are going to behave like this, probably you want the DGCA to actually micromanage.
Actually, it
the
is a
HR
bit of a
departments of the
catch-22,
carriers.
Pooja, because you don't want too many government interference. Government interference is seen as something just traditionally and wholesalely wrong and problematic. No private business certainly wants any government interference. The government does it, it's a problem. The government doesn't do, then also it's a problem. Today, the Congress party has blamed it at so-called monopoly. But I don't think it's any monopoly in the industry that has created this issue. What has created this issue is one airline being unprepared and willfully unprepared.
And that airline, Shivani, holds 60% of the market share, the major terminals. And that's why we are saying when power concentrates, fairness evaporates. Government is just a regulatory body, turned into a regulatory body now. And who is responsible for this disproportionate domination of IndiGo Airlines? 23 months back. 23 months is a long time. And you could not follow the roster. And anybody with a basic brains would realize that this was intentional. This was fabricated and the chaos, and it was all on public. I saw a video of father pleading the IndiGo staff for a sanitary napkin for his daughter who got his menses in the airport, stuck in airport. And I think this is an IndiGo. Let's be very, very clear about one thing. IndiGo doesn't give a damn about consumers' interest, doesn't give a damn about pricing. Today, I wanted to travel for a medical conference. The airline's cost is 1 lakh to Hyderabad. Delhi to Hyderabad is 1 lakh rupees. And be it pricing, be it consumer handling, be it complaint redressal, nothing. That's because you've allowed monopoly, because aviation sector is on duopoly autopilot.
No, but what is the government supposed to do? If IndiGo is the largest domestic operator, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to fund aircrafts for other airlines?
No, I don't want to fund aircraft. First of all, government cannot be blackmailed or strong arm twisted into rolling back its guidelines.
Fair enough.
It should have penalized IndiGo. There are thousands of flights that have been cancelled and tens and thousands of customers that are stranded. Somebody must be visiting their ailing parents. Some death might have occurred. Somebody might be visiting somewhere, and now they are stranded for hours without any food, water, and no information. And just an information that your flight has been cancelled for some 8 long
I
hours.
get that. And obviously some accountability will be fixed. The already directives have been given that people have to be refunded, hotels have to be booked for them, and all of that. I don't think it's going to go that smooth on ground still. But Pooja, my question was, you've blamed quote-unquote monopoly. What does monopoly have to do with this, and what does the government do about it?
Because IndiGo was sharing, taking over 60%, so it could arm twist government into rolling back its guidelines. If this has been an earlier, scenario where there were many operational flights, and Air India being after Air India merger, they're only sharing some 28% of market share, and that's because government has no choice. That we are saying, and this is happening in every sector.
Okay, but should the government then regulate how many airlines there are, who has how much market share? I'm not sure how the government is supposed to do so. It is a private business, it's a free market. The airlines will come up according to their own profitability. Some have perished, some have grown. I'm not sure what the government is supposed to do about that. Then it will be too much government interference if they start doing this.
I don't think so. There can never be too much of government interference.
I think there can be. What are you talking about? In India, we've been complaining about too much government interference from day one.
No.
You know, you cannot let a corporate body which prioritizes profits over consumer interest run the reins.
I agree
And
with
that's
you. I agree with you. So let's say this situation has made itself clear now. There will be repercussions, hopefully very strong ones, and precedent set. But that monopoly issue is what I'm, trying to figure out. What is the government supposed to do about it? But let's go across to our other guests as well. Sarosh Tamania is an aviation lawyer. Do you think this is a monopoly issue here? You could argue that IndiGo got too boastful. They thought that they could disrupt 60-70% of the operations in India, and they will eventually get the ministry to buckle under pressure. Is that what happened? And if so, what was the government supposed to do about this?
Yeah, understanding government policies and how the governments have been historically acted, the airlines are so used to getting leeways or so used to getting extensions, as if for anything, all the government deadlines are always given extensions. So I think they took the DGCA and the government very lightly at the time of planning their roster, or at the time of when the new scheme was rolled out. They thought that they might very easily get an extension. But accordingly, the government was very stringent this time. They did not allow for extension, and that is why when the fiasco happened. But the DGCA stepping up now, rolling back the policy, giving some direction, it is very late. They should have done it on day one. When the first day, instead we are on the fifth day of the fiasco, and the fiasco still continues. Even in spite of the fact that flights are cancelled,
Yeah.
people are still stranded for 6 7 hours at the airport. Did it solve the problem? See, because IndiGo being a private body, they can do their own planning, rostering, whatever. But understand, aviation is still one of the most regulated sectors in the private system also. Pilots are certified by the DGCA, their rosters are given to the DGCA, the DGCA knows the schedules, the DGCA permits how many flights the airline can fly.
No, so this is what I was getting at. That oversight may not be looked at as government interference. That oversight is necessary.
Already because of the safety norms in the aviation industry, it is a pretty controlled industry. So government knew what is happening. It is not that the government is blind-eyed.
So I'm trying to understand, are there not rules that say, okay, you need to have this much plane to pilot ratio? That would have solved this issue. Then airlines have to, work accordingly.
Correct. You are absolutely right. When the government rolled on this new the FDTL rules, they should have got the scheme that your winter schedules. Now, what the government has done is, one way they have reduced the flying hours for each pilot, and during the winter schedules, all the airlines, including additional routes, and they've been granted. And that has been granted as by the permission by the DGCA, by the Aviation Authority. So what were they doing when they were granting additional routes? They know that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Captain Asad Khalid, do you think this accountability has to be set at multiple levels? It cannot be about the airline alone, because an airline cannot be, cannot be allowed to expand until it can fulfill the routes that it already has and fulfill them safely.
Yeah, I agree with both the observations. And what DGCA and Ministry of Civil Aviation could have done and should do is, number one, cap the cost of the ticket from point A to point B. Like one lady was saying that 1 lakh rupees to go from one city to another. So one, we have a big fiasco going on at the airport. Second, the other airlines are profiting out of it. This is something which DGCA and ministry can straight away stop. Second problem that has come out is because the airline was not following the pilot training program, which it has pledged to the DGCA. So what happens is that when you have an aircraft induction plan, you are supposed to say what is your pilot induction plan. So pilot induction plan is given and it is not told, despite it is being revised every now and then. And what happens is aircraft lands up here and pilots have not been taken in. You must have heard that for last 1 year IndiGo has been giving a lot of LOIs to pilots, cadet pilots, taking money from them. And then what happens is, once they give the LOI, that pilot is now in the induction plan, though he may not be inducted in next 2 years.
Okay.
But
just hold your thought. We're getting A response from IndiGo CEO Peter Elvis now has issued a statement. Let's listen in.
To share with you that we have experienced severe operational disruptions for the past few days. Since then, the crisis continued to aggravate, with today, December 5th, being the most severely impacted day, with the number of cancellations well over 1,000, or more than half of our number of daily flights. I, on behalf of all of us at IndiGo, would like to extend our sincerest apologies for the major inconvenience this has caused to many of our customers on account of delays or cancellations. The situation is a result of various causes. Yet, for you as a customer, it's important how we as IndiGo address this. We have defined 3 lines of action. Firstly, customer communication and addressing your needs. For this, messages have been sent on social media, and just now a more detailed communication with information on refunds, cancellations and other customer support measures was sent. Also, we have stepped up our call center capacity. Secondly, due to yesterday's situation, we had customers stranded mostly at the nation's largest airports. Our focus was for all of them to be able to travel today itself, which will be achieved. For this, we also ask customers whose flights are cancelled not to come to airports, as notifications are sent on this. Thirdly, cancellations were made for today as to align our crew and planes to be where they need to start afresh tomorrow morning. Earlier measures of the last few days regrettably have proven not to be enough. So we've decided today for a reboot of all our systems and schedules, resulting in the highest number of cancellations so far, but imperative for progressive improvements starting as from tomorrow. With these actions, we expect tomorrow to have cancellations below 1,000. The support of DGCA in providing specific FDTL implementation relief is of great help. Still, there's lots of work in progress, but going forward from here, in alignment with the Ministry of Civil Aviation and DGCA, we do expect to further improve every day. Given the size, scale and complexity of our operation, it will take some time to return to a full normal situation, which we do anticipate between the 10th and the 15th of December. I do understand that these disruptions have caused much discomfort to our customers and has shaken their belief in IndiGo's reliability so carefully built over these past 19 years. My colleagues, all the great IndiGo teams and frontline staff have been working relentlessly to address the situation. Rest assured, we are doing everything in our control to not only restore your trust and belief, but strengthen it further over time. Thank you for your patience, understanding and kindness during this difficult time. We shall keep you updated on an ongoing basis.
All right. The CEO there, who's under much fire, has finally issued a video statement. Earlier, of course, IndiGo had also expressed apologies to the customers because of everything that has transpired. But the moot question is just this. Why could they not see this coming? Was there insistence on their part that they're not going to hire any more pilots when the number has been pegged at just 65 more pilots that could have eased their troubles and everybody else's troubles? Where is that accountability as, you know, the biggest national operator? Shiv Khera, I want to come to you. What do you make of this statement that has been issued by the CEO? Is this enough?
Shivani, I would like to go on umbrella issue. India's track record for the past 50 years has always been create a crisis, then manage crisis. This is what really has happened all through. And I also want to make a point here that infrastructure like airlines, railways, all these things, the government has to intervene much stronger than a hands-off approach. All over the world, railways, airlines, they have to work like this. And Tushar made a very great point here. The way we are working right now, including the speech that your the CEO made, this is all damage control. This is all damage control. But you see, people who are far-sighted, they live by the philosophy prepare and prevent rather than repair and repent. I repeat, they live by the philosophy prepare and prevent rather than repair and repent. Now, why has India come into this kind of a scenario? Go look at the last 5, 6, 8 years. 5 airlines have gone out of business. Go Air. This is dying. Spice Air is in the dying leg. Before that, Jet Air. Were they all crooks? I don't think so. Somewhere the government has messed up. They have messed up. Now, every country in the world, they do have regulations, but at the same time, regulations are there to be monitored. You see, why are these things not monitored? That's a major, major issue.
So do you think heads should roll? Do you think in the Aviation Ministry and the DGCA, both heads should roll?
5,000% they should roll. 5,000%. And you know something, if they are not going to roll, nothing will happen. You'll do programs like this, call people like me, and we'll talk, and that's the end of it. You know what? That is why monopolies are sad. Nowhere you want to have monopolies. And the lady said very well, monopolies are very dangerous. That's why you want to have 5, 7, 8 airlines. You want to have that properly. You see, monopolies has caused arrogance. And that is why these people have put profits over people. So they have not cared about their people, their passengers and so on. Their only objective was profits, and that's about it. So keep in mind, regulations are very important, and what they are talking about only nothing else but damage control. Damage has already been done. And secondly, the government is absolutely majorly I would put the primary responsibility to the government, secondary responsibility to the airline.
Because I think that's important. It's not really connected to just what is happening today, but when Air India was being divested and when it was being divested as a national carrier, I was one of those people who was of the opinion that a government should have an airline. Airlines are extremely important national assets.
No, I don't agree with that.
No, fine. That's a debate for a separate day. But the problem that happens is that we want less government and less government intervention. But ultimately, the government also has to realize that when things go wrong, it's going to be the government that the public will hold accountable. They can't hold a private company accountable. So ultimately, they should have been very clear about the fact that if something goes wrong, they can't pass on the buck to the airline. But Saroj Tabani, I want to understand from you, what penalties should be slapped on IndiGo? Once this crisis is stabilized, what action should be taken?
So first and foremost, IndiGo there should be a direction regarding refunds, that refunds should be made immediately.
That has been done. That has been done.
Happening. They're just paper checks only on paper. People are not getting their money back.
That direction has come this.
It is not a mandate.
That direction has come this afternoon, so we'll wait and see exactly how the. No, I want to understand from you, what penalties does the airline get? Refund is just par for the course. Because of this, what they've done, what penalty should it get?
No, they have violated provisions of the FDTL which are under car. So these are a very serious violation in nature. And according to the impact, the DGCA has, of course, put a committee in place to analyze, but they'll come up with a report and all. But there should be financial implications, and there should be huge financial implications, setting the example that it doesn't happen in the future. Because giving them 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 20 lakh penalties is nothing going to happen. It has to be huge, and it has to have an impact, financial dent on the organization for it to feel the pinch of it. So they don't repeat such a mistake.
That's the only language really that airlines like IndiGo will understand. Nobody really wants to do this. But maybe that's the only language they understand. Their bottom line has to be affected. Otherwise, they don't care. So, but Tushar, here's where the government looks terrible. It gives in these directions. There is more than 18 months for airlines to, fulfill this. Under pressure of what has happened, it has reversed its own rules. The government looks like it has given in.
Well, that is the unfortunate part, but the government's options are also very limited. Do they start playing a power battle with Indigo and let the disruptions continue for another 2 weeks? The Indigo carrier is happy saying that these disruptions will last until February. Those were the reports coming in. So the government cannot risk 3 months of disruptions with a carrier that has 60% market share. So they have to sort of find the middle ground right now and get things moving ASAP. And this is unfortunate, but what does the options government have? One, they nationalize the airline. Very, very bad. Two, they break down the big airline into four different companies. Again, a very bad idea. Three, you can find them endlessly, nothing would really change. Four, start micromanaging Indigo by having a non-voting government shareholder or stake. These things, I mean, we can debate them, we can discuss how well a government playing a role in a nationalized airline is great. But at the end of the day, the government option is very, very limited. All they want is that passengers should not be stranded because there is an economic cost
No, but
attached
why did
to
they
such a
approve?
disruption.
Tushar, I'm not asking for more government intervention because also feel that in India, that is what we're fighting for day in and day out. Less
Yes.
government intervention, right? But the public reactions are also like that. I mean, look at that order that came in from the courts about the 15-year-old vehicles on the national capital. There was
Yes,
public
yes.
furor, it had to be taken back. It was for the good, it had to be taken back. This is for the good, the private company doesn't comply, it has to be taken back. You can't move forward like this.
Absolutely,
Because at
absolutely.
various junctions, either private players don't want to cooperate, they're not ready for it, or the public itself is furious. You can't have world-class rules and world-class facilities when nobody is willing to comply. That is also a problem.
It is a big problem. And right now, what can the government do? What do I really want? I'm happy to pay 10% more for my ticket rather than have a fatigued pilot fly me and my co-passengers. But
Are
then
they?
what I
You
say
are
really
willing to
doesn't
pay
matter. But is
10%
the
higher, but I don't think most customers are.
Exactly. Most customers are not. You're very right. But then the government is also thinking on those lines and are saying, let's just get things moving. Let's just get the passengers moving. Let's
Okay.
just ensure minimum disruption. And if it takes a
But
withdrawal
here's
to do that, then be that as may.
No, but here's where the problem is. Nobody is batting for greater government intervention. If they are, I think that's a knee-jerk reaction. What can be done, what should have been done is that there should have been oversight by DGCA. Why was IndiGo allowed to have so many flights and operations? Why were they not asked about giving a duty roster that could have been taken care of, that would have taken care of for the new rules? This much the DGCA could have done. Surely there has to be accountability on their part. Tushar.
Well, absolutely. I think for the future, one of the lessons here is that if any new set of rules and guidelines are rolled out, probably in that window where the carrier or any company in that matter is requested to adhere to it, there is some degree of micromanagement. I don't like saying this, Shivani. You know how much of a capitalist person I am. But if micromanagement is what it takes for this country's monopolies to adhere by the rules, by the government rules, and take care of the passenger safety and the consumer interest, I stand all for micromanagement. I think this is what we have to go for.
Pooja, your final response. What is the action that you're looking forward to from the government on its own as well?
Because I'm looking for more and more, regulatory action. We are looking for IndiGo being penalized. The IndiGo CEO whose bite we just played, he didn't took an oath on the Constitution of India, but Mr. Ram Naidu did. And he is responsible for the consumer's goals. And that's why, you can't just let loose a corporate taking over profits over consumer pain any day. And that's why you have to be the final player. You just can't say these are the rules. Okay, let's take back. You are an elected.
And not do it too late. Might as well intervene a little bit earlier before the situation goes out of hand.
Tushar said, there is a window where government needs to step in because it's the government of the day.
Absolutely. But, it gets very murky because too much intervention is also when ministers and babus can have their own discretionary powers. And I don't think that's a great thing to have, to be honest. So, Captain Ehsan, Khalid, final comments from you, sir. What should follow?
Okay. The reason is that the FDTL calls for 10 to 15% more of manpower pilots to be trained. There must be a budget allocation for pilot training and timeline given to this airline and all airlines for adequate pilot training and developing the human resources. Right now, they are just enjoying what was developed by previous airlines. So this will be a penalty also, in terms that they will have
to put aside some of their profits,
and consumers will get benefited, and overall we will develop a human resource pool, which they do
Shiv
not
Khera, final comments.
Shivani, nationalization is not the answer. One, giving refund is like giving medicine after death. And third, I think you gave
I
the
agree.
answer yourself. You said heads should roll. In a corrupt society, heads never roll. Nothing happens. That's why they go out scot-free. That's all.
Right. I think that's a good note to end this on. I do thank all of our guests for joining us.
Thank you.